Did you mention this very important thing to your first year families? Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast. My name is Travis Allison from Go Camp Pro. I'm a summer camp marketing and strategy consultant, and I'm excited to be here with my pals Joe and Gabz.
And my name is Gabrielle Raill. I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Ouareau. Camp Ouareau is an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains of Quebec, Canada, and we focus on creating a positive environment for gender minorities.
And my name is Joe Richards. I'm the executive director at Pearce Williams Summer Camp and Retreat Facility located in Iona, Ontario, which is about halfway between Detroit and Toronto. And we're part of the United Church of Canada's camping network.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to the two of you. Sorry, Chris can't make it. We're recording this during the Tri-State Conference, so Chris is an important part of Tri-State. He's there. But we thought this was a good topic that is worth reviewing every year. And so we want to talk about the important things that you can communicate with your first year families. And before we dive into that, I want to take just a second and say that, like all podcasts, reviews are important to this. If you go to ratethispodcast.com/camp, you could leave us a rating review there that could go out to more than just iTunes, all the other services. But really, if you want to help us out, if you like this topic, then just forward the episode to a friend by text, screenshot the particular episode you like and send it to a friend. That is incredibly helpful. It helps us get more camp pros to listen to these things. And we believe in this topic. We think it's important. I'm going to start this off by saying that I think that a lot of camps undervalue the importance of specific communications for first year families, brand new to camp families. And that they just assume that the same information that they give everybody who's been coming is good. And that the same style of information will work. And I don't believe that that's true. I believe we have to give very special attention to this. We've talked about this a number of times, so I won't go into details, but I will say that I have been tremendously inspired by Camp Champions in Texas and the work that they have done, the research they have done in creating specific staff positions in looking after first-year families, and then putting that importance on it. And they discovered this and put time and effort into this because it saves them time and money in the future, and it is an excellent it is an excellent investment in your camp future to take a time and effort to communicate well with new families. So, Gab, for you, what are some of the important sort of philosophy, instead of specifics, what are some philosophies or things that you think it's important for us to think about?
So for me, I think, so we're talking about what do we tell first year families? And I think that sometimes as camp professionals, we think, listen, I put everything in the camper guidebook or it's all on my website. And so we know that people need to hear this information many times. We've talked about this on CampHacker. So for me, I take our camper guide, which we've worked really, really hard on and proud of, and we break it up and we create staggered emails. And so all families, starting out 5 weeks before they arrive to camp, they get a weekly email. And it's repurposing the content that we've already created, and it's put into that email. Now, we sometimes add videos with a welcome from the section head, or maybe there's a little added tour of a potential cabin that they might be staying in. These are things that you can get your staff members to do during staff training, and it can go into the last email, but not trying not to reinvent the wheel, but look at the wheel and say, how can we multiply it in different areas? And I'll also say that the reason why I'm bringing up the staggered emails is that it's by far the number one appreciated piece of communication that we have for our families, simply because they tell us, simply because they say, wow, I love all this information. Thank you so much. It really helped me and my child to understand more about your organization. And also, to be transparent, we meet with all of our new families over Zoom, and we go over this information and we look at the camper guide. They hear it, but they also don't hear it. So this the staggered email piece, and because it's closer to camp, it feels like they're ready to receive most of the information. And it allows us to adjust some of the information that we want to share with them. So don't reinvent the wheel, just repurpose it.
Well, and having a chance to talk to so many camp directors in my job, the most common refrain and frustration I hear from camp directors is that parents don't read. And then that's the end. We put out this thing, they register, we send them the parent handbook, and they don't read it. But what Gab's talking about is a very intentional program to break all that down, to reinforce it, et cetera. What are you thinking, Gab?
And also camp directors don't read, staff members don't read. None of us there's that few percentage of us that do read, and I hold them dear as my best friends, and they tell me all the information that's happening at conferences or associations. But the majority of people don't sit down and absorb all the information. So camp directors, shine the spotlight on yourself. You don't do it either. So how would you like to receive the information multiple times?
And Gab, do you use a specific email program for that? And what program is it?
We use MailChimp. That one has been the easiest for us to use. It's easy in the sense that you can have your camp's color scheme. You can upload pictures easily and your logos. MailChimp tends to wants to optimize their program often. So they change, I think, almost twice or 3 times a year how you use MailChimp. And so one of my teammates, Alexan, every once in a while, she's like, are you kidding me? I just got used to that last one. Now they changed it again. At the end, she's like, actually, this is really smart what they did. So there is that hiccup that it's not something that stays static. They do change to optimize the program. But the reason why we also love MailChimp is that our staggered emails, we have one for first year campers, but we also have one for returning campers as well. That's different because we don't want to repeat ourselves with returning families. And because we do want them to read everything. So everything we send them should be new information or reminders. And so we have multiple staggered emails going out at the same time. And with MailChimp, you can pre-plan what's going out. And also our families are multilingual. So some get English ones and some get French ones. So they help us organize all of that mess.
And I think it's important to draw attention to, and again, we're leading the pack on this, that you have intentional emails that are automated. So you don't have to remind yourselves, okay, it's Tuesday, we have to find these 2 different sets of emails. And that saves you lots of work the next year. You go in the fall and just edit and make sure it says 2023 instead of 2022, but it's already created. You have a baseline. And also when you create automations, you create 2 or 3 emails the first year, and then you add ones in, and then you can add more in. It's so much easier to build on stuff than that. The other piece, and Joe, I know I have your thoughts, so I'll go to you in just one second, but I want to capture this. The other piece about communications, a lot of camp databases have automated communications built in. But one of the things that I find frustrating, and I'm going to encourage every listener to talk to your database provider about this, is that they tend to have automated triggers based on time of registration. So it's, registration plus 24 hours, plus 7 days, plus 14 days. But they don't often have arrival day minus 1 day, arrival day minus 48 hours. And so some of the email service providers like MailChimp, you can set that up better. But please talk to your database people. Like, they need a group of us saying, why can't we do backwards communication from arrival date so we can schedule everything in our camp database? We're not having to export everything to MailChimp, maintain a current list in MailChimp with the current registrations. So much pain in that.
But I also think it's important we talk to our database, any database you're using, about APIs, right? The fact that the database should talk to other things, because I find it, I also am frustrated by databases' inabilities to talk to other things. And the reality is, why would we say that a camp database has to be a full email program when a simple API would allow MailChimp and it to talk together? So I say that as a non-programmer, so I just think it's simple.
Right. I just put API into some program.
Yeah. So I think one of the other things we need to talk about when that information is going out is also to be really aware of camp jargon with your first year families, especially. So if you say something or if you mention something, you need to recognize that what you say might mean nothing to them. I first experienced this in Algonquin Park at the Taylor Staton camps, because there was an actual typewritten sheet that literally, like on a typewriter when I arrived in 99, that had a list of Canoe Lake jargon. So just things around Canoe Lake that were very camp specific, from building names to this and that, and a bit of history on that. And it was great to have. And it's a good reminder. We were talking just before we started recording the show, as people at camp call buildings differently than you label them sometimes. Yes. It just happens. So we've had the George for what that happens. We had the George Fox Outdoor Education Center, which had a sign that said the George Fox Outdoor Education Center. And then, but when I arrived, the staff had already, and it was 7 or 8 years old at that point, they just called some building the Foxy. And I had no idea what building they were speaking of until I figured it out. And somebody at one point found like a cardboard box that had a fox and it said Foxy above it, and posted, like, tacked it to the outside of the building, which I also let go. I was like, oh, that's great. Perfect. And go from there. So the idea of, with first year families, the jargon, even when they drive in, they might not know, right? If you don't call it exactly what it is, if it's not labeled exactly what it is, it can be very difficult. And not just first year families. I would also say that staff, first time staff, new staff at camp, because there's no better way to make someone feel left out than to not share all of the information.
Yep. I think that, my advice, the things to pass on, I try to recommend to clients that every first time child or staff, Joe, I think it's a great point, arrives on the first day able to do one activity that they know. So usually for me, I try to encourage that to be a chant or a cheer that they teach by email and videos ahead of time, so that on that first day, the kid's like, oh, I know this one. It was all the camp songs are either, slightly different version of Baby Shark than the way you sing it, or so there's one that's like, oh, I know this. And that's from my own personal experience. My first year as a kid, when we got to dinner and they sang Johnny Appleseed, my mom had prepared me for that and taught me that. I was like, oh, there's a thing I can do. So give them one thing that they know how to do on the first day, and one person whose name or face they know, so that they can say hello. Hopefully it's their counselor. Sometimes technically or logically, that's hard to accomplish, but make it a head counselor or even the director, etc. I'm 75% sure that I'm still involved in camp, because when I was like 9 or 10 years old, my camp director remembered my name, and was able to say, hi, Travis. And that was just such a thrill. That's something that I love.
That's amazing. And I'm not sure if, Gab, if you said you do this at camp, I know that Jaleesa at Ouareau does it for staff and for campers. So returning staff members have a different arrival time on staff training day than new staff members. Yeah. And Ouareau does it with campers as well. So returning campers come in earlier than new campers by like 2 or 3 hours, to give the returning campers the ability to re-see their friends, do all of that stuff, and then really focus on welcoming the new girls to camp.
I'm going to say that Jaleesa was heavily inspired by Gab talking about that on the CampHacker show and set it up there, because it's such an awesome idea, Gab.
As if Joe's not on the show. Do you even listen when I speak, Joe? Come on.
Sorry, what's your name? Who are you?
Jaleesa.
Mr. Short-term memory. What is this in my mouth?
No, it's wonderful, because actually this is one of the reasons where Jaleesa and I actually met, was because of that idea, and that I had mentioned on CampHacker, and she really wanted the details on how do we do this. And I think the thing is that when we think about communication, I think about, like, I'm so awkward in new environments, and awkward not in the sense where I'm knocking things over or though that can be very endearing. It's more very internally. I don't know where to sit. I'm not quite sure what to do. What are the rules of engagement? I just feel very, very, anxious basically. And I think of like different maybe dinner parties I've gone to where I recall specifically a bunch of us were sitting in the living room chit-chatting and having a wonderful time. And then somebody left the living room and crossed the dining room to use the washroom, and there all the food was. And so when that person came back, said, "Are we supposed to serve ourselves?" And then the host was like, "Oh yeah, it's there." And she had set it up beautifully, but just didn't announce, like,
Didn't say, yeah.
it's ready. And I think sometimes with when we're communicating to families, it's not about thinking of the list of what are the things I need to say. It's more about getting excited about people feeling welcomed and about people having the information, and get excited about that. And the other thing is, the more I find we do this within our organization, the least, annoying conversations I have to have with families afterwards that were overwhelmed or didn't expect this. I mean, equally so with new staff members. The more we can do beforehand, the less we're experiencing that awkward energy, in the first couple of days of camp for our families and for our campers. And that's where that idea of bringing in our returning staff members and our returning campers in earlier, so we can they can let out all of their anxiety, their excitements and the screams and the, oh my goodness, and the catch ups, calm down, and then say, okay, why does camp matter to you? And how do we do that for this new group that's coming in, and have those awesome conversations you can have with your campers and staff? It really makes a difference. But I think it's taking that same philosophy and how do we apply it to our families that are new and anxious, but we want them to feel like they're welcomed and that we thought of everything. And I think communication seems overwhelming, but as camp directors, I hope we enjoy welcoming people. We just have to practice it off of our site before people arrive.
Yeah, and it becomes more difficult if you have campers coming in by bus, because that welcoming extends backwards, right, to all of those pre-camp emails, but also how are they greeted in a parking lot at a giant mall, right? Is your bus labeled correctly? Are there people there who are excited to be there? Do you have enough staff there? Because this is the thing, and I was just talking with a new staff member here about what arrival day looks like. We don't want any parent, what we're doing on arrival day, where kids arrive by car, is any communication we've had up to that point. Everybody who comes in gets greeted, and they're going to see they're going to meet 4 or 5 people before they're even at the registration line, because we want to trick them into believing that we know what we're doing, gain their trust, so that then they will leave quickly after dropping their child off. This is because camp for me doesn't start until all the parents leave site. So, but this goes to that idea of giving parents in that pre-camp communication the small breakdowns, because some kids like Gabz probably don't know where to go, don't know what to expect. And so it's easy to give a breakdown of what a day looks like at camp, and what how meals are done at camp, and so parents can talk in camp language. That goes back to the camp jargon part about how those things are going to happen to help a child who might not be comfortable in super new environments.
And I think just that sentence, what to expect when, and fill out that sentence. What to expect when you arrive on the bus, what to expect when, what your first meal will be like, what to expect. And if you can fill these out, and if you can have, it's a wonderful staff training exercise, especially with your leadership team members who hopefully love your organization, are looking forward to leading the new team, but getting them to actually map out what to expect on not your first day, but when the car, drives underneath the arches, or when the camper steps foot onto the bus, what does that look like? And have them write it out. It's a wonderful exercise for them to map it out for themselves. And then how do we make sure that that's nice and clear and concise? But I love that, what to expect. And what to expect in the first 72 hours is, if you can cover that for families, that's I think in a family experience, they're feeling like, wow, this camp is, they've thought of everything, and that's what we want. We want that type of relationship with our families.
And they thought of everything idea, a lot of people put Disney up on a pedestal for this, but it's so, just to be thoughtful about this. It's not that complicated. It doesn't have to be that expensive. And it's just something, once you decide that you're going to do it, you get better at it every year. And your language, what happens when, Gab, reminds me of something that Dr. G advises and has advised on lots of Go Camp Pro podcasts, that we tell people that we expect that there will be mistakes by saying, not if you make a mistake, not if you get lost on the first day, but
Right.
when you feel,
Mhm.
or you feel lonely for home on the first day, when that happens, not if that happens. We're acknowledging that everybody's going to make mistakes. We're acknowledging that the first day is going to be hard for everybody. And then you set people up. It's like, oh, I know that camp said that if I feel this way, this is who I turn to. And we set people up for successes in that. That's an amazing thing to communicate ahead of time, just to make people feel a bit more comfortable. I've got a couple of other, I've got lots of ideas for this show. I'm super excited about this topic. So I'm going to give you one more and then I'll pass it off to whoever's ready with the next one. Thinking about first days, because there's so much involved in first day. You probably, if you're a longtime listener, have heard me say this before. I know that there are camps that have done it. One client in particular of ours has done an amazing job of this, helping younger kids on first days. So if a kid shows up when they're 11, it's their first time at camp. It's a little different than if the kid shows up at 9. I know a number of camps have done this, have taken sort of the average or normal steps in that first day from the time that the child wakes up at home, and has made that into a storybook, a coloring book that people can do. So the kids get it the week ahead of time. They can work through their whole first day of camp in a coloring book. And so it starts from when you wake up, your final packing, get on a bus or get on a plane, arrive. This is what the arrival is going to look like. And it's all a coloring book. And this is what your cabin's going to be like, meal, the activities on the first day. And it's just
I'm gasping.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I've been suggesting it for years. I know a couple of camps that have done it, and it's just such a standout thing for parents. Like, it really gives them, and these camps in particular, you could email PDFs of this, print this off at home and color this out, or you could have it printed on cheap coloring paper and sent to families to do that. So I think that's an amazing idea. It's an amazing implementation. It's my idea. Whether or not it's amazing for that, but that the implementation of it I have seen has been amazing. What else would you tell first-year families, Joe?
I would tell first-year families about two things for the end of their session. So our sessions at camp are only 5 days long, so we don't have the first 72 hours. The first 72 hours is almost the end of camp.
Yes.
And so
fair enough.
we also share with people. I think it'd be great to share with people two things: places to stop after camp, right? Like on Friday afternoon. A few years ago, Iskis had set up a partnership with Shaw's Ice Cream locally, where there was a gift card we gave, not a gift card, a discount card we gave to the families upon departure, so they could go get ice cream on a Friday afternoon. But I also think in that same vein, something to the parents could be emailed that on departure day to the parents about how to talk about camp with their kids, right? How to ask what camp is. Because there's so many things that I, as a camp director, do not share with you as a parent, because we want the camper to share that. And so giving parents a quick 5-point checklist about how to talk about camp with your kid and find out how their week went, beyond all of the manipulation I put in place to make sure their final day is all they remember. So it's just great. Had chips and burgers for lunch. We had, there was battle stouts, there was this, there was that. And it's, that's what I call Friday excitement, right? That you just want the latest memory to be the memory, but to have parents be able to ask about how their week went and give them a place where they can go as a family and spend a couple of, some time talking about camp.
Super smart. What else do you think, Gab?
I think that parents want to support their kids going to camp, but don't necessarily know the tips and tricks. So just having a tips and tricks, such as write a letter or postcard 5 days ahead of time, depending on where they are. Maybe pack family pictures if they're sleeping over, but having that list of things, that suggestions for parents. It's kind of like it's maybe for first year parents, it's something that they wouldn't think about, and so just like that little like top 5 or top 10 list, I absolutely love. And again, first year families are typically really appreciative. And then you have like those families that were, both parents have gone to camp before, and they have all, they have their ideas, so they already know, but they love the fact that we have already written it up and saying, oh, I wish my parents did something like this, So I think like having those items, those pieces written up for them is really nice and comforting.
And I think that goes to the point of like, we see parents bring packs of letters for us to deliver because a 5-day of camp, it's hard to organize mail.
Mail there. Yeah.
So instead of trying to mail them a few days before, they literally just slip our medic, right? 3 letters, with the day on it. But to tell parents to do that would be beneficial, because there's something very different about a handwritten card from your parent or guardian versus like an email joke, right? Like there's 2 different things going on.
And I think parents really appreciate it. And this came about because we also have the same system when families, if they're able to drop off their kids, they give us either care packages that, and has a date on it and when we're to give it to the child, or letters. But this idea came about because the person that was receiving those packages saw in one of the parents' faces, who was a new parent, saying, I didn't know I could do this, or I hadn't.
Yeah.
And that sucked. I was like, dang, we hadn't prepared you. So we did this, little, just a mini little, hey, parents, this is some ideas. This is what you can do. Whatever fits with your organization, it's different for every team, but just giving those first year parents that leg up, then they know, oh, okay, like this is something that I can do. And they don't feel regretful when they get to your organization and say, oh, I should have done this.
An awesome implementation of that is Birch Trail Camp in Wisconsin. Check out their YouTube channel or their website. They have broken down like how to write a good letter to your daughter at camp. What that includes, what kind of encouragement, what your daughter may be feeling. That's all written into this video, so that it just giving parents that thing. And then, you can say at some point when they register, there's advice on our website for how to write your daughter, but then you can remind them, you can send them the video, you can hit that in different mediums to try to reinforce some of those ideas. I
think, Travis,
ahead,
those
Joe.
how-to videos are really useful. Not only that, my better half Red wants to, and we've never actually filmed it, but a video of how to pack for camp, right? Like as 5 days at camp, and Red has a very particular way of packing when our kids were young, which I simply don't get involved in. It involves larger Ziploc bags with names of the days and I just don't. But like, even to show that, that's a tip and trick that some parents simply have no clue about. How do you pack for a kid to go away to camp at 5 days, and what do you pack it in? And
what's too much and what's too little?
Not a garbage bag. Do not pack in a garbage bag.
Right. Yeah. But and then it all comes back to, it makes your jobs easier in the long run. Supporting our families, communicating with our families. At the end of the day, who does it serve? Obviously it serves the campers, or camper first. Yes. But also it makes your life easier. The camper feels safer because their family knew how to help set them up better. This all comes back to lessening your time with dealing with anxiety or inclusion. You can focus on not repair, but like, what's next. So if you're thinking about that way, like what frustrates you, that's a really good place to start. Also, when you're things you need to tell your families.
Well, and I had written down for suggestions that I think first year families should have a separate survey from the regular camp surveys, and should have a lot of the same questions, but not only. But I think it should be a piece of what didn't you know when your child arrived that you wish you did, which might solve for some of that stuff, like, pre dropping off packages versus mailing them stuff. And that gives you some good customer service ideas to keep fixing your systems. But also another question, like, what advice would you give for next year's new parents? And then you have stuff. It's like, this is not coming from us at the camp. This is coming from other parents who've been in your situation just last year. Here's their top 10 best advice. You compile it from a bunch of surveys of your first year families. And then you have another piece to reinforce. We're incredibly intentional. We want to share all the ideas. We want your child to be successful. And, here's how other families have done it. That's a thing that I think is super smart. Go ahead, Joe. Yeah, please.
I have one more. The idea of, and we don't do this. I don't want to say that we do this. I just want to say that I have lots of ideas that I don't do. But the idea of putting new families in touch with older families for those FAQs and those questions, because what happens is a lot of new parents are new parents, right? I think it's funny because when you said earlier what to expect when, and as a parent, I'm like, oh, that's the what to expect when you're expecting, which is still one of the best-selling books for families who are expecting. And so for first-time families, to connect them with an older family who can answer those questions. So it's recruiting a few. It's not to say that you need a direct match with everyone, meaning that if I choose Cheryl as the returning camp family, Cheryl could probably talk to 4 or 5 parents, right? It's not like I need a one-on-one. And so one at a time, but I don't need 5 Cheryls to talk to 5 parents. And so the idea that, because sometimes it's just questions that we would never imagine. And if you train Cheryl on how to, to write down those questions, so then they get back to us, then they can go into videos, then they can go into FAQs and be even more helpful, to the point where at some point we'll just put that information into parents' brains before they ever register, and they'll think, why didn't I ever come to camp, right? And I should sign up for camp because I know everything about camp. So connecting first-time families with older families for questions. Same thing, you can do that with staff as well.
I saw this was and I apologize if you're listening. I don't remember the name of the camp. I know it was a camp in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, who did this. They had they drew most of their families from one city, Edmonton in their case. It wasn't like they had Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, and wherever. So they could really focus on that city. They could get to know and talk about that city. And they put together a staycation package for parents. It was effectively under the banner of, so you've sent off your kids for the week and you're free parents for this week. And they had gone through all the local events in the city, and like for each week or each session that those kids are at camp, like, here's the free events, here's the cheap events, here's the more expensive events going on. So to help you plan your staycation. And, it wasn't, it wasn't a direct, this makes your camp experience better, but it definitely demonstrates that you're thoughtful about the parents' experience as well as the kids. And I thought that was super smart, really thoughtful, really intentional.
I love that. Wow. I think that whether you're a day camp or a sleepaway camp, we have very few moments to impress, or I won't say impress, but connect and build trust with our families. And if you get to see them twice a day, then you have that opportunity at the beginning and at the end in pickups. And but some camps, you don't even meet the families in person. And so we really put a lot of time and energy in being thoughtful and intentional for our campers and for our staff members. Well, that's the hope. Our families, if we can show the same type of intentionality that we do with the people that are on our site, with the people that are off of our site, it just translates. If they're being intentional with me this way, this is an intentional camp. So I love that sort of mentality. And that wouldn't be long or hard to do. You could look at your local area and say, there we go. So I love that. Like, take every opportunity to show your intentionality for your family, so that they can speak positively about you, because they don't have necessarily the summer camp experience, obviously, that their children have had.
Yep. Excellent. Well, I'm so grateful for the two of you, and thank you for the ideas. And it's so fun to have these calls and just gather so many ideas from so many places. It's awesome. If you got some great ideas, listeners, and you appreciate this, if you're watching us on YouTube, we'd love a thumbs up, and please make sure you subscribe. But as I said at the beginning, pass on this episode if you think there's something that one of your camp friends could appreciate and could learn from. We're grateful for those as well. I want to take a second before we move on to thank our sponsor for this episode, Ultra Camp. We're so happy for their support throughout the season, and we're grateful to have them. We know that getting pictures sent to us from Tri-State this week that we're recording, and I know that Ruby was able to stop by Ultra Camp's booth to thank them for sponsoring Camp Code, but we want to just say thank you to them. One of the things that Ultra Camp does is provide something really specific for CampHacker listeners. So you can discover their 10 best marketing tools and tips by visiting them at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker. CampHacker is all one word. There you can download their free guide. The thing about this job is that it can feel so much like you're just tied to your office, and you've got no time left to go out there and do camp, enjoy camp, and really, get to meet the kids and the staff that you impact. The folks at Ultra Camp know this, and they know that you didn't get into camping just to be tied to your desk. So they created the software to help camp professionals like yourself handle the registration details, handle the reporting quickly and efficiently. Ultra Camp has transparent pricing and flexible pricing. It means you can rest easy, you can focus on your job, you can focus on the camper's experience. There's a low minimum entry point for getting in and using Ultra Camp. They have clear pricing with no hidden costs. They have flexible payment terms and no long-term contracts. Ultra Camp's goal is to provide resources so their clients can spend more time in camp doing what they do best. And if this doesn't sound like your registration software, don't you think it should? Visit their website at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker and set up a time to chat with them. They look forward to meeting with you. So thank you to Ultra Camp. That means it is time for our tool of the week. We always ask our guests to bring one tool that helps them be a better camp director. And without looking at the list, I'm going to you, Joe, first for your tool. I don't know what your tool is today.
Yeah, I haven't written my tool down because I'm just almost positive I've given this as a tool before, but on my other screen, I actually have an auction site open right now.
Okay.
There's an auction live. I will say again and again and again to people that one of the best ways that I, as a camp director, have gotten things for camp is through paying attention to auction sites, because you can get things ridiculously cheap if you do it. At some point I use a many local sites. So go around highbid.com, that's hibid.com. And then you can choose your local auctions from there. And I get email newsletters, probably once a week or a couple of times a week from each of the auctioneers. And the reason I brought it up today is because A, there's an auction going on right now, but B, I got onto a different one, Bid Spotter, and it is like industrial equipment. Food plant equipment. Right. So like if I wanted to buy a cheese shredder for like bagging 100-pound bags of shredded cheese, you can buy stuff like that. And part of this goes to my big tool of the week, which is just, you need to be curious, right? Like this is the whole thing, is if you're not curious, you're going to miss out on a bunch of stuff. But highbid.com is a great place to start. A ton of small auctioneers use it, and it's totally worth it.
Yeah. And two good things you've bought at auctions for camp, Joe.
Oh, for camp, things I bought at auctions are things like chairs. We were in need of banquet chairs to turn something into a wedding hall. Yeah. And so you're paying $2 or $3 per 120 per chair times 120. Yeah. Other things at auction, I bought a stump grinder, which doesn't sound like you need it, and most sites might not. But if you're a site that cuts down trees and you have 10 or 20 stumps, a stump grinder for a couple of $1,000 will last you for the next 15 to 20 years. I think we paid $900 for a $3,500 price stump grinder. It's paying attention. That's all.
Sexy. Yep.
That's
Awesome.
awesome.
Perfect. And in the next 18 minutes, I could buy a new conveyor toaster for $150.
Whoa.
Yes, exactly. I will not. Well,
Holy.
yeah, this is why I pay attention, people.
Yes. Thank you, Joe. That is a great one. Good start, Joe.
I think
Gab, what's your
the
tool of the
kids-
week?
I was going to say, I think the kids call auctions Facebook Marketplace.
But there can be much better deals at auctions because of Facebook
the
Marketplace.
auctions are awesome. Yeah, auctions are awesome. Okay, so my tool of the week is biodegradable. It's a company in Quebec, and they sell handmade biodegradable products. And I got hooked on it because of their deodorant. It works and it's natural. And I'm talking to camps that do have tech shops and sell things, and we get stuff from maybe Walmart or our local pharmacy or Costco or whatever. But are we giving options for staff members and campers that are biodegradable? That's just something to put out there. And then secondly, I find this actually a really, really nice gift for some of our staff members. So if you're wanting to be like, oh, here's a little something fancy, it's vegan, biodegradable, comes in really cute packaging. The artwork on it's quite lovely. So, and you can order it online, and they have a really large product line. So it's a lot of like for everybody. And then the last thing I'll say about it is that they have a stain remover soap bar. That thing hasn't met a stain that it can't handle. am very skilled at staining things, and I've used it multiple times, and it blows my mind. It's magical. So this organization or other organizations, see if this is something that your camp would be interested in also having in its tech shop or giving away as gifts.
Super. That's so fun. I have said in Tool of the Week a number of times that I believe that every camp director should keep their own toolkit hidden away that just has some basic tools for you that, don't get lost in with all the other tools, in a desk somewhere, etc. So my proposal for your desk hidden office toolkit is the retract-a-bit screwdriver that has 6 bits in it of different kinds. Joe has a Pickwick screwdriver that he has at his desk. He's showing for the YouTuber watchers. And this is 99% of the bits you'd ever need on a camp day, just to fix a screen or put the door handle back on the dining hall or whatever it is. But it is great. And they're not that expensive. I think they're 15 or 16 bucks. But if you go to camphacker.tv/podcast, look up this show with the suggestion for first year families, and you'll see our show notes there with the links to our different tool of the week, including the retract-a-bit screwdriver. I want to take a second today and just highlight one of the other Go Camp Pro podcasts before we start to say goodbye. I want to call attention to First Class Counselors. First Class Counselors is a show that Matt and Oliver do that is for you to pass on to your staff. It is advice. It is, training, just thoughtful things that your staff can learn before they get to camp. If you do that, you can give them specific episodes and share them, or you can just ask everyone on staff as part of your pre-camp training requirement. Put this onto your phone and listen to 2 or 3 episodes before you show up. And so search for First Class Counselors in your podcast app, and some great stuff in there. So we thank Oliver and Matt for that. We just got a notification this week that their episodes have been listened to 7,500 times. So
Wow.
that is a pretty amazing
Way to go.
effect on the camp world that those two are having.
That's awesome.
So if you want to follow up with Joe or Gabz, you can go to camphacker.tv/podcast, search for advice for first year families. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can reach me, Travis, at gocamp.pro. We thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of the audience. And I thank the 2 of you for your impact and your input for this show. And thanks for the evening, friends.